With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with the SJ Jennings. And we're going to explore more today around a quote that has come to mean a lot to us. And I think a lot to many, many other people that I know in the men's lane, the men's initiative. Dan Allender, author, counselor.
We mentioned it in the previous last episode.
Dan Allender, counselor, therapist, author, teacher. Really, really love Dan's stuff, Dan's way. But it's his quote, and he says that find like-hearted kings, and we've added for our sake in redeeming generational masculinity, parentheses, find like-hearted kings, warriors, and elder sages, and sign treaties with them. Mm-hmm. And when they go to war, you go to war.
Yeah.
So I think I'd say first impressions of, do you know when you heard that the first time? Do you have any recollection of when it landed on you? Was it me from the podium?
Yeah, probably.
Platform?
It was probably at an encounter weekend.
Uh-huh.
There's another one that's very much like it from Haynes Maxwell.
Yeah.
Remember what Haynes said?
Yep. If you're going to do a ministry, you'll probably be okay on your own. But if you're in a war, you better have friends and know who they are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And same thing. And when you
idea.
When you go to war, they come to your aid.
That's
exactly.
Right. So man, I just remember hearing that going, I've experienced going to war and kind of having my
tail hand, having it handed to you.
Well, just having it hanging out there in the wind. Like, man, there's nobody on my six back there, So it's important. It's important, and I think it's in us to try to do that. We were talking about this episode a little bit before we started, and I just went back to childhood. And especially when you and I grew up, there were just packs of kids on BMX bikes riding around in neighborhoods.
You're a pack, yeah.
Exactly. And you're kind of got this unspoken, you're in the club, you're in the group, you're on the team, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of truth to this in the context of warfare, but I think it speaks to belonging too.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Connected, known, needed. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are things that I think are core to men's hearts. And I think that's part of why quotes like this resonate. The Doc Rivers quote that I've used, that average players want to be coached. Average players want to be left alone. Average
Correct.
Players want to be left alone. Good players want to be coached. Great players want to be told the truth. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing that going, wow, I want to be a great player. Uh-huh. Can I handle that kind of sparring? Can I handle that kind of invitation to deeper friendship, where you have the ability to say, and this is where we want to go a little bit in this podcast with some of our stories of what does that require of a man? Mm. Can I talk to you about something? Mm-hmm. When you come in my office and shut the door, I don't know if it's for the privacy of something that you really want to say, or if I'm in trouble. and both of them are like, oh crap, he shut the door. What is going on? Okay, we signed a treaty.
Maybe I'm not as self-aware as you are, but whenever you come in my office and close the door, I'm like, okay, this is a privacy thing. He doesn't want anybody to hear what he's going to say.
Right.
And that could be true, but it also could be like, hey, SJ, whoa, what was that
about?
What was that
about? Yeah. So we're gonna pull this apart and really kind of take a look at what does this mean and how have we experienced this and I think tell some stories of the frontier of our lives of friendship and this whole idea of like-heartedness and what that looks like. So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast.
Men are seeing higher suicide rates in this country, and
I think a lot of young men are actually looking
emotionally
to answer that
toxic
question.
masculinity.
How did masculinity end up here? Being known for causing harm, being violent, overpowering, and unsafe, and being relationally destructive or relationally absent. This is not who men were created to be. Men have been the target of a long and brutal assault by an enemy that knows what we might become and fears it. At Zoweh, we believe that if men are a big part of the problem in culture today, men could be a big part of the solution. What if masculinity was safe and loving? What if masculinity was adventurous and encouraging? What if men were brave and empathetic, engaging and helpful? What if masculinity looked like Jesus, kind and strong? What if men were no longer dangerous, but dangerous for good?
The Dangerous for Good Men's Summits. Head to www.zoweh.org/DFG Summit for more information.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, where we're talking about this particular quote, Dan Allender's quote, find like-hearted kings, and we've added elder sages and warriors that are moving in the same direction. Sign treaties with them, and when they go to war, you go to war.
Yeah, and it does say that. I love that he puts the word kingdom in there. When one kingdom is at war, just the implication of, and it's small k kingdom. I mean, we all have a kingdom that we've been given authority over. Regardless of how big or how small it is, it's not about the comparison of it. You have a kingdom. Is the point. And so with that, you have a certain amount of power and authority, and doing life alone as a kingdom, as the reigning small k king over your kingdom, is just a bad idea.
Oh yeah. I mean, I go right to Lord of the Rings with the Gondor, right, and Rohan, and light the beacons. Light the beacons.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going. That treaty has been broken long ago. And the whole point, like, look, if they run you all over, our kingdom's next. We got a shot at this.
Right.
And so I think there's a context to this, and I'm glad you brought this up first. This is not cutesy.
No.
In terms of when I think of warfare and the spiritual battle that we're in. No, they're coming. And they're relentless and they're ruthless. Now, if I'm false self-dominant, they've got me on kind of their own autopilot.
Yeah, you're a double agent.
I'm actually doing their work for them.
That's right. That's what I mean. You're a double agent.
So there is a couple. I like this. There's a couple back assumptions that you are to be a like-hearted in our world is to be an oriented man, or at least to be in training to become an oriented man, a man who knows where he is, the larger story his story's in, who knows who he is, how he's known in the kingdom, what God thinks of him, what God sees when he sees the true him, and then the good that God's up to in your life. Those are the coordinates of an oriented man, and the good God's up to in your life is healing, training, validation and initiation.
Right. So the good God's up to in your life isn't like, ooh, I found a 20 on the ground. It's
not blessing.
It's not right.
Or in how we think of that
right.
way.
That's my point. Yeah. It's the good can be hard. Like the good is he's revealing to me why I behave in this false self way, or how my false self gets out of the cage when XYZ happens. That's the good that God's up to, and in revealing and healing. Yeah. Yeah,
I would probably put Romans 7 in here as a subtext for like-hearted kings. I mean, when you think of the apostles, they were trying to give people the information and the invitation to an intimate walk with God that would empower them. Reminds me of Graham Cook's quote about, what if grace isn't unmerited favor? I mean, as soon as he said that, I went,
wait a second. Heresy.
Wait, that's all I've ever heard.
Right, that's all it's ever taught.
And it's always bugged me that it's about, if it's about unmerited, that somehow implies there's merit. And what if grace isn't as much about unmerited favor, but is more about, and here's what Graham Cook says, the empowering presence of God to transform you into who you really are.
Yeah.
These aren't just quotes to me.
Right.
These are,
every time I hear that and you remind me of it, I'm like, that we need that on the wall in here.
Our locker room,
exactly.
our cave, our tower. And so, I think about like-heartedness in that way. So we're dissecting this quote a little bit, and like-heartedness to me means I want and I need to be with men who have a level of orientation. And I talked about this in the DFG podcast. I want to be with other pro players, talking about the strategies. I want to know what Messi knows. If I'm a footballer, soccer, I want to know. I want to, as a younger player, I want to be around that guy who knows a thing or two. I want to be around a seasoned quarterback who maybe is at the end of his career as I'm at the beginning of mine, but we can be like-hearted. I can learn from him. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And so,
I don't want to be, the guy that can dunk on an 8-foot rim. I mean,
it's fun, but
it's fun, but the guy that can, block on a middle schooler. Like, come on, man. No.
So I'm with you. I want to just make sure we're not shutting some people out.
No,
that are in this that we use this athletic metaphor. I want to be with the symphony's #1 violinist. If I'm an up and coming violinist,
you want to be in chair number 2.
I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to be with them. So like-hearted, aspirations to be there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that is consistent in all of these spaces is how the music gets more notes on it. How the
more complex
how the
time
plays,
signatures.
How the plays, X's and O's, have more lines on it. And how the ability to improvise or audible and
read the defense.
We're
back in athletics again.
Versus I'm not just running the play,
right?
Or playing the music, even how it's written. I remember in what was the Beethoven? No,
Amadeus.
Amadeus, the Mozart, when he took Salieri's music that Salieri had written, and he says, "You're just kind of playing the same notes over and over again. It's kind of cute." What about? And he goes, "What about this? What about this?" And then he.
Takes it to another level.
And that's when Salieri really determines that he hates Mozart. But he takes it to another level. Yes, beautifully said. That is what this idea of like-heartedness and moving and advancing and having experiences and encounters with God, that healing, like we said, healing and training and validation and initiation that can be shared.
Yeah.
And not necessarily questioned, like, what are you talking about? But really shared with somebody who's like, oh my gosh, that's the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you.
Thank
you for telling me.
Another way to say it would be, there's a couple ways to say this, but I'll say it this way. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Always. If you're
always the smartest guy in the room,
you need to change rooms.
You got to change up your rooms a little bit because, or if you're trying to be the smartest guy in the room, that's another situation. But you want to put yourself in situations where, you can be challenged. Yeah. You can be, and not challenged for the sake of just butting heads like a couple of rams,
right?
But challenged like, well, okay, SJ, I just heard what you said, and I'm not saying I disagree with it, but tell me more about that. Help me understand better.
Great question. Help me understand better.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what you mean.
Love it when a guy...
Did you choose to mean that word? Did say that word? Is that what that word means?
I love it when a guy who's just a little bit further down the road than I am, and that's very subjective, I understand, but will ask me a question like that.
No, it's a powerful. I think that's a. Let's just add that to it's a quality of like-hearted kings, and versus the smartest guy in the room, or talking all the time, or always advising. I don't personally survive, much less thrive very well with those guys.
Yeah.
I was in a leadership.
No, you ought to do.
I was in a leadership. I was in a leadership conference for actually business leaders, and there was just 10, 11 of us in the room. Kind of like you said, subjected myself into this space with a friend of mine who runs these, and I didn't go in arms folded, like doing him a favor. I went in curious, but I also did, if I'm honest, I went in with, okay, I got to endure this for a few days. That's how I kind of went in. Well, within a few hours, I'm like, whoa, now I know why I'm here. And some of it was for the other. They're there. They're like-hearted. They're there. They've signed up to become more.
And you're not just classroom.
To get better.
This is discussion.
Now the craziest thing, bro, I was the oldest dude of these CEOs and executives in the room. I was the oldest one.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I don't think just sidebar, I don't think I look like the oldest guy in the room, but so this one woman, she's about 40, was sitting next to me, goes, you remind me of my Uncle Jerry. I went, oh yeah? Yeah, he's a good guy. My dad's brother, he's about 70. I'm like,
no, what? She didn't.
What in the world? Anyway, I just felt, oh man, it must. Yeah, I got to get some work done. I got to do something. So maybe I can get some clothing tips.
Kind of ointment?
Clothing tips from Caleb. So anyway, we were talking about like-heartedness, and I just would say, what does that look like? And some of it is like-hearted in the belief systems that you hold, but probably not all the same, because we're in different places. Tom and Mike, Tom Benner, Mike Glenn, Gary, Jimmy Mack, Jim Shanae. I mean, these like-hearted kings, elder sages, warriors, Josh, Caleb, Cole. There's some diversity in the masculine journey represented by these men, but the peers that we have and that we walk with, and that's one of the privileges I think I get to have with you, SJ, is not just working with you, customers alongside you, but man, our friends and the men that put their swords on the table, with us, and let us put our swords on the table with them in a brotherhood. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the price is on that.
Yeah, priceless.
The value,
right?
And it always requires some things of us, and I think you're back to your vulnerability, transparency, willingness. Being like-hearted means I'm going to be open with you. And I want to be open to you.
Right.
In this journey together, I think of the opportunity to move down a path. We might be at some different skill levels and some different spaces in the kingdom in terms of our healing and training and validation and initiation by God. But we're on that path.
Yeah, I said this about Rob Gronkowski, going back to athletics again, sorry. But when Rob Gronkowski joined the Patriots, especially in the last few years he was there, he elevated other players.
Yeah.
With his presence.
That's a good thing.
I mean, he just and Brady did too, and other players have done it in other teams for sure. But I just watched that happen. I watched him kind of transform from the guy that's going to always lower his shoulder, take a beating.
Yep.
I mean, and that guy took a beating.
Yep.
To the getting a little more.
He put some licks out there.
He did too.
When you're that big.
Yeah, man. I mean, but I watched him as the younger guys came in. I watched him elevate their play, and
I like that.
That's what we're talking about. Is like,
I agree.
Can we be kind? Can we be loving? And can we be honest with these men that we've signed treaties with to help them elevate their play?
Yeah,
and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful idea. I sign on to being around people who are good for me and are for me.
Yeah.
And I think about, people who have a certain experience, let's say in engineering, and they can bring that experience into the room to solve a problem. Or back to music, they just bring their skill set and they elevate the other instruments, the other band members, if you will. I think that's a really good idea, that there's like-hearted, doesn't mean the same, but it does bring a level of elevation that we're better together.
Right.
Now, I've got my kingdom, like you said, small K kingdom. I think it was Dallas Willard who said, again, about your kingdom. Your kingdom is mostly a place where your will should be done. Time out. What if your will is kind of jacked up? What if your
motivations
your motivation centers? What if your brokenness is infecting your will, and so your will sounds like, well, I told you to, or who do you think you're talking to, or that this kind of aggressive, or hey, not now, I'm busy, not now. I mean
or whatever you think, dear.
Yeah. So
I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, checking out.
Oh, man.
So if your will's compromised, right, and this is why a lot of small groups, two things, SJ, that I could say about what this isn't. In the world of small groups, and I've been a part of them, church or other ministries that try to do small groups, if you don't have some kind of code of conduct, of ethics, of what here's our standard for Fight Club. Here's our standard for our small group.
The pirate code.
You will have talkers talk and hiders hide.
Teachers will teach.
I mean, they're going to exercise their gift.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to bat first, third, fourth, seventh, and maybe ninth. And then first. The batting lineup doesn't exist for them.
That's right.
Even a facilitator, a good one, is probably not talking that much.
Shouldn't be.
So that's one thing I think about when like-hearted kings, because this sounds like we're traveling together. We're meeting regularly together. We're spending time together.
Yeah. There's councils of kings on a regular basis.
And if it's us three, if Caleb's with us and it's us three, then if I haven't heard from Caleb, I want to have the wherewithal. Caleb, what do you think? Or even, SJ, you just interrupted Caleb. Hang on a second. And you go, I got you. I'm so excited to share this. Caleb, what do you think? So, knowing some code that we abide by. Secondly, I think that's the small group comment of, it's not like that. It's shared. There's some equality. We're not all equal in terms of our knowledge and skill sets, but there's an equality to our worth. And our value in that space. Second,
and there's an unspoken understanding. Like you're not in the place where the rules still have to be kind of written on the wall.
But they might need to be visited again.
And you might have to revisit them. Well, that could be a, hey man, can I talk to you for a second?
Yes. Bob, you just keep swinging, at these turns. So the second one I think about is accountability. And this isn't that.
No.
This is not an accountability group or me policing you, or what we're doing is trying to confess our mistakes, even though we can share our mistakes, but it's not a group of men that I have to report to.
Mm-hmm. It's not shame driven.
And pressure.
Yeah, the pressure to shame yourself, I did it again.
Yeah, and somehow pressure motivated. So just a couple things that I think is important to say that it's not. And I don't find men responding well over time to either one of those scenarios. Now, the one guy that's pretty happy is the guy doing all the talking, but he wonders why guys stop showing up in weeks 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
Or don't want to be in that group.
The other guy that's real happy is the sheriff that gets to point out how,
accountability.
You did this again, really?
Yeah.
I gave you that software. I told you to do X, Y, Z. And then he's wondering why nobody's
my friends that have shared with me more and more about the recovery community, the sponsors that are very, very effective are less policing and just very, very loving. And the loving thing to do can be to be honest and share a word that may be challenging to listen to, but they're like Doc Rivers said, good players and men on comebacks need to be told the truth and probably, like you said, asked some questions.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, know what you ought to do.
Yeah.
What's a whole lot better is, so where do you think we should go from here?
Yeah. How can I help? What are you,
Gary?
What do you need from me?
I don't know if Gary penned it. The first guy I heard say it was Gary Barkalow. So shout out to Gary. Answers before questions are rarely helpful.
Yeah.
So even if you know the answer,
it's
better to start with a question. It just is.
We already kind of hit the, find like-hearted.
Well, before you move on, I just want to say, accountability. We're not talking about an accountability group.
No, that's what.
But accountability is a product of this relationship.
Right.
It is a.
It's not the goal.
It's not the goal.
It's a product.
It's the result.
Yeah.
If you have a treaty, if you have a relationship, if we have walked some miles together, then we're gonna be accountable to each other.
Right.
Like I'm gonna pull you aside and say, Michael, what the heck?
I think
was
of
that
these funny examples we just used. If you hit a sour note and you kind of keep hitting it, I'm like, timeout. Why do you keep doing that?
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Or you can't hit that shot, or you don't somehow. I mean, there is, but it's a question. What is going on?
I snap somebody's head off around the meeting table.
Right.
I mean, bro,
what's going on?
What is happening?
Yeah. And so, thank you for clarifying that. As we move into kings, elder sages, and warriors, I think we have talked a lot about that in the generational spaces. There is something important about having peers. I think there's some ministries that talk about Barnabas, Paul, and Timothy.
Yep.
This generational Barnabas was paired with Paul. Paul picks up Timothy. They travel together. They're generationally in some different spaces, Barnabas being the older man, Paul, and then Timothy. I think that's kind of the idea that stepping into some generational friendships is really not only a good idea, I think it's an important idea. And that's what redeeming generational masculinity is going to require, is that the young guys aren't always sitting around talking about the old guys. The old guys aren't going to sit around talking about what's wrong with the young guys.
Right.
So they enter into these treaties, and I'd move into that idea. Yeah, what does that mean to you to sign treaties? So you've like-hearted, moving in the same direction, elder sages, kings, warriors, and sign treaties.
Yeah, I think the signed treaty part is just practically speaking, that's the thing that makes it official. So we're not saying that you got to sit down with a document and a notary public.
But
it's not a bad
idea.
It's not a bad idea.
To sign a document.
Everybody has their own copy, and you sign it. If there's 5 guys in a group, you sign 5 of them, and it goes around the table, and then it's sealed with. You could do a real ceremony with that.
There's a covenant to that,
and then go
a
up
commitment,
on the wall.
A promise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
an acknowledgement. This is I pledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's what I think of as there's an official nature to it as a result.
Yeah.
It's not a casual thing.
Yeah.
It's what I've heard some guys refer to as my 3 o'clock in the morning friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm struggling at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's okay for you to call me.
Yeah.
Or for me to call you, I should say.
Yeah.
But or vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah. Reminds me.
What do you think when you sign?
Yeah. First, treaties? Craig Mayhew came to mind.
Yeah.
I remember a story he told when he was talking about talking to Heidi, his wife, about really not having many friends.
Mm.
And as our wives can help us for sure, she said, "Well, are you being a friend?"
Mm.
And that's exactly what Craig, as he told the story, he just had this long pause.
Hmm.
He's like, Craig's voice.
Yeah, I know Craig's voice.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
And he did. What was important, SJ, is he realized he was kind of setting back.
Yeah, not engaging.
He was kind of, and I get it. I want to be pursued. It's what I think all of us desire, and I would say, every man. I have not found one that hasn't had this moment, typically earlier in his journey, that the potion
mm-hmm.
or the pill or the moment happened that affected them in the way of kind of literally digesting this sentiment. I'm on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I am alone. Nobody is coming. Nobody cares. I don't have anyone to tell. Those are all versions of kind of that same thing. And I'm sure that the feminine hearts and feminine journey has.
Oh, for sure.
But I think when I think of the enemies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Poison. That's the one that
has to
be overcome.
Yeah.
In this space.
Yeah.
And maybe this implies that there's hundreds of guys that want to sign. No.
I'm sure there's a lot of guys listening that are desperate for this.
To get out of your way.
Mm-hmm.
If you want our help, put that out there.
Yep.
Go to the comments, hit us with an email.
Yeah.
Isn't it allies@zoweh.org?
Yeah, it is.
Allies@zoweh.org. Let's see if we can find you somebody.
Mm-hmm.
These elder sages, there's almost 100 of them around the country.
Chomping at the bit to talk to guys.
Who would, they may not be within 30 miles or 40 or 60 miles of you, but they have a phone.
Mm-hmm.
They would pursue you. That's what they want to do.
Right.
So I want to, when Viper says to Maverick at graduation, you've earned enough points to graduate with your class. Then they go through the ceremony. Then they get orders. And Maverick's, right, the Iceman, Hollywood, and Maverick. Maverick lost Goose.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah. And if you need a Wizzo, call me. I'll fly with you. Yeah.
If they don't give you one when you get there, call me. I think that's your 3 a.m. idea.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to say too, we've kind of maybe implied that we're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. If I remember correctly, whenever 2 or more are gathered, right?
Yeah.
So find a guy.
Yeah. That's the Craig Mayhew thing. Find one guy that wants
one guy.
And I think the orientation space. So I would say, man.
And you'll pick up guys broken along the road along the way, by the way, if you start with 2 guys. But go ahead.
And if you're a part of their healing and they're a part of yours, you probably will have a friend for the rest of your days.
Yep.
So this is still risky. It's still fragile. The enemy doesn't want this.
Well, it requires, like you said earlier, it requires vulnerability and
showing
being
up,
real,
being there
with one another.
Showing
and
up,
that's risky.
Taking time.
Yeah.
Younger guys have that window of their 30s and 40s with the kids and all of their practices and all of their games and all of their recitals and all of their stuff. I mean, you'll have to fight for this.
You will.
That's probably the first wave you'll have to push through. But I would say, how do you do it as you're stepping into that? Get Heart of Aware or get King Me. Get something. But I think those 2 books aid you in your orientation.
Yep.
And read those books with a man. What did you get for page 17? I underlined that.
Yeah.
I got a story.
Yeah.
If it takes you a year to go through that book with 2 or 3 or 1 or 5 guys, it's not about getting through the book.
It's not.
It's about identifying like-hearted kings. And you'll find out more about another man if you'll journey with him in that, let's say, book study.
Oh, yeah.
Scriptures galore. I'm not going to call it a Bible study from the traditional standpoint, but you'll have plenty of scriptures to explore in those books. But the point is, after 6 months, after 8 months, you will say, I did not know that about you.
Yep.
Over and over again. As men, let the book help encourage you to share and then to listen.
Unearth is the word that came to mind. You mean?
To be known.
Yes,
to listen and ask questions. And then when the good stuff starts to happen, and it will if you do this, you can go to war.
Yeah.
For each other.
Yeah.
And with each other.
Right.
Over the things that make you upset, that happened to him, and he'll do the same.
Yeah.
The empathy and the sympathy of, bro, I'm so glad you're here. I didn't know that. I'm amazed that you have survived. And hey, if you need, call me.
Yeah.
You just don't get that in session 1. It's got to be earned.
Yeah.
And I think your point and the invitation to do that with another man, it's less about getting through the book and more about getting through the man.
Yeah, no question
the other
about
man.
it. No question about it. Hey man, as we're landing the plane here, the whole topic of this series was this quote.
Yeah.
You brought up the Doc Rivers quote. A couple others maybe came up during I wonder if we could ask our audience to share their favorite quote in the comment section. In and around this topic or otherwise. That might be fun to see what they come up with.
Yep.
And then we had a comment of the week, right?
Yeah, we did. In response to more healing is more freedom episode. Michael wins 23.
I wonder, do you think he's a Michael Jordan fan with that
23?
handle?
23
Michael
might give him away.
23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. We fall, we break. We fall, we hurt, but we must arise. Be healed and overcome, for we all must mature to health. Right?
Yeah.
Made me think of the Robin Hood, Russell Crowe's Robin Hood. Rise and rise again until lambs become lions. Yep. That's the training circle. That's the way.
I love it.
And if you have, right, what's the scripture? But woe to the man who has no one there to help him up. Right? And great is the strand, the 3 strands.
Yeah, cord of 3 strands is not easily broken.
There you go. Find your 2. Be your 3. That kind of journeying. I think Mike wins it's so good. And to have a witness, to have an advocate, to have somebody who can be there for those moments, for those stories, and to help you up. That's what the scriptures are inviting us to. Don't go this alone.
Right.
And yet that's the very thing the enemy, like I said, is so much about, dropping that package off and having it ingested. I'm on my own. I have nobody. Nobody's with me. And then I go back.
It feels so true.
Yeah.
And it just isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go back to one of my favorite stories, Les Mis. Knock on that door.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't knocked on that door. Ask. Jesus said, seek. Jesus said, knock.
That's right.
And keep asking and seeking and knocking. If you want this, you're going to have to push into this.
Right.
And meet his provision on the other side of that door. So
it's good, man. Hey, I'm glad we signed treaties years ago.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
With many amendments.
It is possible to do that.
And lots of additions over the years. But to bear witness to your life and your growth has been a privilege, bro.
Yeah, same.
It's been really good. And to set tables and dig foxholes for other men has been also as fun. So you guys know what to do. Rate, review, forward, subscribe, all that
Leave
stuff.
Leave a comment. What's your favorite quote?
All that good stuff. And we'd really appreciate it. We'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.